I am a licensed clinical social worker. On my business card for work, it says holistic psychotherapist.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Holistic. What's the holistic part mean?
I'm so glad you asked that question because I think when people hear that, they think it's all maybe like an all natural approach, but
Phil Phails for you.
that's not how I use that term at all. When I think about the holistic perspective, it's sort of this person in the environment perspective that I'm looking at. So, social workers were trained to look at things through this biopsychosocial perspective. So, that might be their personal biology, their psychiatric history, their social environment. So, all of these things that are feeding into how they're presenting into
So
the
one's their
world.
body, one's their body, one's their like their behavioral expression. Is that? And then the third one is their communities.
Yeah, I
Is
would
that a
say
way to think
like
of
their
those
social
three?
supports or
Okay.
social stressors that might be impacting their
Which
circumstances.
is work, family,
Maybe work,
relationships.
family, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so the holistic is incorporating all three of those things.
Yes. And what I would say is that it's not at the exclusion of, I think sometimes it's become, there might be this perception that, oh, you're holistic, you don't work with medication management or you don't offer psychotropic medications as part of your intervention approach. But that's not true in terms of how I work. It's more, okay, I'm going to start with what I would consider the foundation of health and well-being, which is your physical body.
Yeah.
Are you taking care of yourself?
Which we're talking nutrition,
Yeah.
we're talking movement, we're talking, what else would be? It'd be like what you put in your body, your food, how you're moving your body or not. What
Yes.
else goes in the body? Probably those two main things, huh?
Yeah.
Movement,
Sleep hygiene.
That's a huge
That's a big
one.
one.
Are you sleeping 8 hours at night?
Yeah. So that's huge.
So those three things, which are huge ones. What else?
And then I would say your social well-being, your social emotional well-being. So what are your protective factors in terms of, do you have a spirituality practice? Do you have a sense of community? Do you have community supports through, that could look like something organized or not organized necessarily, but so how are you nurturing your social emotional needs?
Okay. And then the middle ones is diagnoses, like
I would say
psychological diagnoses.
Yeah, I would say yes, psychological well-being as well. So when I think about that, I think about all those things.
That makes sense. Like start there.
Start there.
I think a lot of stuff could be changed in a person's world through the body piece alone.
Oh,
like getting them sleeping 8 hours a day, get a good routine and hygiene and like a morning routine.
Exactly.
Get them like, moving towards eating a healthier diet or incorporating movement in their life. Those can be game changers.
Game changers. Yeah. So a lot of times, I will, when I get a new client, maybe they come into me and they are already working with a provider. And it really just depends on the circumstances. But for a lot of people, they're not looking to start with a medication evaluation necessarily.
Right.
Right.
You know what? It doesn't feel good when they do.
Well, I would say, so sometimes those supports are already in place. And so I'm working within that context.
Right.
But if someone comes to me and they're experiencing all these symptoms that are impacting their day-to-day, I'm talking to them. One of the main questions I ask is, okay, tell me about what's your day-to-day look like? Tell me how you wake up in the morning. Walk me through your day-to-day.
Yeah.
From the time you wake up in the morning, what you put in your body, to the time you go to sleep. And there's so much you can gather just from learning how someone constructs their day-to-day.
Yeah.
And if we're not starting there and you're learning like, okay, this person is actually waking up and the first thing they do is go grab their coffee. And which is, I'm not saying that's negative necessarily, but are they starting their day with that supercharge of caffeine, or are they easing into that morning with, some light movement, some sunshine, getting a walk in? So there's there's a lot of things that when you look at someone's nervous system and how they're presenting in the world, you find that if someone's like really seeking those dopaminergic experiences first thing in the morning, then it's like, okay, well, let's kind of walk this back. If I'm seeing you running full tilt and your nervous system's on fire, then maybe we talk about, okay, how can we like ease into this morning? Maybe it looks like, let's move our body first before we go to the caffeine, and then we take that first, step into our work day where we immediately go in and check our email, which
That's what I was thinking.
like, you see those, I mentioned the caffeine because a lot of times it's like, okay, I got to wake up and I
gotta
have to
work
go straight to my computer.
I gotta go work.
And then that person is wondering why they're feeling so depleted by noon, and having short span of attention where they're losing productivity. So it's like, okay, so let's talk about like what it would look like to like ease into your morning.
Yeah.
And that's not always possible, especially for people, that have active families or are responsible for other human beings.
Yeah. Sometimes your kiddo wakes you up and is like, it's time to go to school. And you're like, for me, speaking personally, when my daughter wakes up, it's time to go to track practice.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that's different from introducing something like caffeine or some other things, stimulants into this scenario. There can be some getting them to school and then coming back, maybe reading something or I agree with the gentle start.
Yeah. And that can look also like starting with a morning meditation, or for some people that's a morning prayer, whatever their practice is, or if they don't have a practice of being able to sit with their thoughts, can we help them build one with something that aligns with whatever their personal value system is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That
makes sense. Holistic psychotherapist. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
I like holistic. It seems like it reminds me of Carl Rogers' human-centered approach. It's like we take each human as they are, and that's where we start.
Right.
And the behavior is a part of it. Mm-hmm. But it's also, it's external forces, it's rituals, it's routines, it's, it's the system that they're in, whether it's family system or social system, and that all plays a part.
Absolutely.
It's such a complex thing, humans.
It is.
We get influenced so easily. Mm-hmm. And then, who knows why when I was 12 and I got that guitar, I was like, I want to be a rock star. Like, who knows? And it could have been a stethoscope or like a or something different, and I'd want to be a doctor.
Right. Like, what are you exposed to?
What
do you have access to?
Yes.
Who's in your environment that you might look up to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nature versus nurture. And I think a lot of it is that nurture piece, which determines the paths that you think you can go down.
Oh, yeah. And that's why I think it's so important early on to have so much, to be able to have the ability to access a lot of different hobbies and different things, and just be able to, that's one thing I'll always be grateful to my father for, because he exposed me to so many different things. He would say himself, I'm jack of all trades, master of none, but he had such a wide range of interests, and he really did expose me to a lot of different things. And that, I try to do the same with my children, and it's more difficult because they have so much access to technology and so much quick dopamine. But the ability to develop interests in all these different areas and to be able to cultivate passions, things that maybe, you never would have thought you would ever experience. Yeah. Scuba diving, for example. I mean, I never had a desire at 12 or 13 to become a scuba diver, but I ended up getting my scuba certification later in life because my father did it and he exposed me to it. So all these things that he did throughout his travel, and photography, another thing, I was like, he always had his camera. So I always had this. I never was able to develop a skill set for it. It's still one of the things that I love so much is photography, because he always had his camera. He would take pictures everywhere, all throughout our childhood and all throughout his personal life. He was just documenting.
I think one huge thing you can do for cognitive resilience is lifelong learning. Two things, like always learn new things. Always expose yourself to experience and novelty in healthy ways, right? Like
Right.
whether it's like, and also stretch your comfort zone.
Oh, do something difficult.
Do something that makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable,
Yes.
like this for you.
Yeah.
Oh, this makes you feel a little uncomfortable, but you're here and you're moving through it. And then it will, what is Dan Siegel called it? He had like there was like the
Window
red
of
zone,
tolerance.
the window of tolerance. And you stretch that through, kind of like you would in yoga. The more you do a certain pose, the deeper you'll be able to move into that expression over time, because you've have repetition, and you believe you can only go so far, but you've pushed that and pushed that and pushed that through discomfort, or sometimes it's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Sitting with it.
There was this great reel that I just saw on social media from Dr. Becky. She's a psychologist. She works primarily with, I think her lens is more adolescent focused, but she talks about resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the reel shows her speaking to a group of older adolescents, and she's talking about what resilience feels like. And when you think about that question, you're like, resilience does not feel good necessarily.
Yeah.
When you're being resilient, it doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
Because you have this opposing force that's kind of pushing against you. And she talks about in this way that there's this knowing and unknowing, and the space between knowing and unknowing
It's uncomfortable.
is so uncomfortable. And she calls that the learning space.
Yes. Yes. I think something that can go along with that is this idea of different types of stress.
Yes.
And eustress being this kind of positive stress. And then there's this kind of in between eustress and overwhelm.
Oh my goodness.
There's like, I don't know where it is, but obviously overwhelm and dysregulation is not going to be supportive of learning. But there's some place beyond eustress that is kind of like, you're a little uncomfortable. Yeah.
She says it feels like frustration.
Yeah.
But in that place of frustration, you are growing and learning, and you're becoming more resilient, but it doesn't feel good. It feels so frustrating.
It feels frustrating. Yeah. Oh, I'm reminded of that. There's this chart of like, if you're going to learn something, I don't know if it's short, but if you're going to learn something, I guess it's an idea. You can, if they give you something that you already know and is like way easy, it's going to bore you. And you're not going to really learn anything, because we already know 1 + 1 is 2. Like, don't come in here and teach us 1 + 1 is 2. If you come in here and teach Jamie and I, if you teach us like quantum mechanics, we're going to be like, oh man, we're also going to be bored, because we don't have the foundation to reach to that, those concepts. We need so much scaffolding just to get to there. So there's this place, this amount, there's this place right above it. There's this sweet spot where that frustration can actually be fruitful.
Oh yeah, that makes so much sense.
It's like, I kind of get it, and you go from kind of getting it to getting it.
Right. Yeah.
It can't be too, I mean, I know I've tried to learn something that I couldn't learn, or at the time I didn't have the right foundation to understand.
Right.
But over time, maybe, I would like read a trade magazine or something in, I did audio engineering a long time ago, and I would read these trade magazines, and they'd be talking about all these compressors and these different pieces of gear, and I didn't know what they were talking about. Yeah. But I just read them over and over again and ask questions of other people, and eventually it started to make sense. But it was uncomfortable, and I felt stupid.
Oh my gosh. I could think back to how many times when I started training jujitsu. I mean, how many times I walked off the mat so many times in frustration, because for me, that process of learning was very difficult. And I could see other people around me learning much more quickly. And I was an athletic kid, but I was athletic in different ways. I did do team sports, but I tended to gravitate more towards individual things like horseback riding, water skiing, snowboarding.
Okay.
And I felt like I would get really nervous and kind of get stage fright sometimes in team environments. and there was so much pressure for me to, make sure I didn't drop the ball or make the mistake. And I would go to this place of like self-blame. I learned over time, it was like I would go into what I now know is just a state of freeze. Now, jujitsu was something that it was a process of learning that was different for me because, for one, it was more, I think I've found out that I'm more of a kinesthetic learner. Like I need to do it over and over. My body needs to feel it. And I also need to hear it and see it. And it's like all these things together.
Yeah.
But I had to do that over and over and over just to learn simple things. And I think one of the ways that me having, I guess, ADHD traits shows up a lot is I'll lose the forest with the trees. I'll get so focused on a specific detail that I'll lose the entire concept.
Yep.
Yeah,
Guilty of that.
Yeah.